What many researchers are beginning to understand now is that consciousness may not be something trapped inside the brain at all. It may be something far more connected, far more responsive, and far more powerful than we were ever taught to believe. And when I look at the growing body of evidence emerging from neuroscience, biology, and human behavior studies, I see a pattern that ancient cultures seemed to recognize thousands of years ago. Our inner world is constantly shaping the reality we experience outside of us. For generations, people were conditioned to think of thoughts as invisible and unimportant. Emotions were treated like temporary reactions with little influence over the physical body. But now scientists are uncovering measurable links between emotional states and biological responses that cannot easily be ignored. Fear changes chemistry, gratitude changes chemistry, stress changes heart rhythms, hope changes neural activity. Every emotional experience leaves an imprint inside the body, and the body responds as if those emotions are instructions. I find this fascinating because it completely changes the way we think about human potential. If emotions are influencing biology, then our daily mental patterns are not passive events drifting through the mind. They are active signals shaping our internal environment every moment of the day. And once we understand this, we begin to realize that consciousness is not merely observing reality. In many ways, consciousness participates in creating it. One of the most surprising discoveries involves the relationship between belief and physical performance. Researchers have observed that when people genuinely expect improvement, measurable biological changes often follow. Heart rate stabilizes, hormonal balance shifts, recovery speeds up, pain perception changes. What we believe appears to alter how the body organizes its resources. The mind is not disconnected from biology. The mind is deeply woven into it. I think this explains why two people can live through nearly identical circumstances, yet emerge with completely different outcomes. One collapses emotionally while the other grows stronger and more resilient. The external situation matters, of course, but the meaning assigned to the experience may matter just as much. Consciousness filters reality through interpretation, and interpretation changes physiology. Modern imaging technology has revealed something equally extraordinary. The brain itself is not fixed in the way scientists once believed. Neural pathways reorganize according to repeated emotional and mental experiences. Thoughts practiced consistently begin to shape physical structure. In other words, the stories we repeat internally become biological architecture over time. That realization carries enormous responsibility. Many people spend years unconsciously rehearsing fear, self-doubt, frustration, and limitation. They relive painful memories until those emotions become familiar chemical states inside the body. Eventually, the body adapts to those patterns and begins expecting them. What starts as a temporary emotional reaction slowly becomes an identity. But the opposite is also true. When people intentionally cultivate calmness, purpose, appreciation, and emotional clarity, the body responds differently. Breathing changes, immune responses shift, stress hormones decrease, even the electrical activity of the heart becomes more coherent. Scientists studying these patterns are discovering that emotional states influence far more than mood. They influence the entire system. What captures my attention most is the growing evidence suggesting the heart may play a far greater role in consciousness than previously assumed. The heart produces powerful electromagnetic activity, and researchers have documented communication pathways between the heart and brain that operate continuously. This means our emotional condition may influence perception itself. We are not simply thinking creatures. We are feeling creatures whose emotions shape cognition in profound ways. Ancient traditions often describe the human being as an energetic system connected to larger fields of life. For a long time, modern science dismissed these ideas as symbolic language with no measurable basis. Yet now, researchers are beginning to detect subtle interactions between biological systems, environmental signals, and emotional states. While many questions remain unanswered, the direction of the research is becoming difficult to ignore. I believe we are entering a period where science and human experience are finally beginning to meet in meaningful ways. For centuries, knowledge was divided into separate categories. Biology was separated from emotion. Consciousness was separated from matter. Human intuition was dismissed whenever it could not be measured immediately. But the boundaries are starting to soften. Scientists studying meditation, focused attention, and emotional regulation are finding measurable effects on the nervous system, aging processes, and cognitive performance. These findings suggest that consciousness is not a side effect of biology alone. It may actually help regulate biological function itself. The implications of that possibility are enormous. If our inner state influences our physical reality, then every moment becomes an opportunity to reshape the direction of our lives. The way we speak to ourselves matters. The emotions we repeatedly entertain matter. The environments we immerse ourselves in matter. Consciousness is not isolated from daily life. It moves through every choice we make, every reaction we practice, every belief we reinforce. And perhaps the most important realization emerging from all of this research is that human beings may be carrying capacities far beyond what modern culture has encouraged us to explore. Beneath the noise, distraction, and constant stimulation of the modern world, there may be dormant abilities connected to intuition, emotional intelligence, resilience, creativity, and deep self-awareness. The evidence is slowly pointing toward a truth that changes everything about how we understand ourselves. Because once we recognize that consciousness is not merely happening inside us, we begin to ask a far more important question about what human awareness may actually be connected to beneath the surface of ordinary perception. Researchers are now exploring whether groups of people sharing physical environments in subtle ways. If those studies continue producing consistent results, then consciousness may operate less like an isolated personal experience and more like a field we continuously contribute to together. And if that possibility proves true, then the future of human understanding will require us to completely rethink the hidden relationship between thought, emotion, biology, and the world around us every day. And the deeper scientists investigate these invisible connections, the more they are forced to confront a possibility that once seemed impossible within conventional models of science. Human consciousness may not be confined to the skull, the nervous system, or even the body itself. It may interact continuously with the environment in ways we are only beginning to recognize. I often think about how dramatically this changes our understanding of personal responsibility. Most people grow up believing their thoughts are private events with little consequence beyond temporary emotion. But if consciousness influences biology, perception, behavior, and even the people around us, then every internal state becomes significant. The quality of our attention matters. The emotional atmosphere we carry matters. The stories we repeat to ourselves become instructions shaping the direction of our lives. Researchers studying stress have discovered that the human body cannot easily distinguish between an imagined threat and a real one. When the mind rehearses fear repeatedly, the body responds as though danger is physically present. Muscles tighten, hormones shift, immune function weakens. Over time, the nervous system becomes conditioned to expect survival challenges even during ordinary moments. Many people spend years living in a constant low-level state of biological alarm without realizing it. What fascinates me is that the reverse pattern also appears true. When individuals consistently enter states of emotional balance, appreciation, compassion, or inner calm, the body begins reorganizing itself around those signals as well. Scientists observing heart rhythms and brain activity have documented increased coherence during positive emotional states. Different systems inside the body begin synchronizing more efficiently. It is almost as if the body performs best when the mind and emotions are working together instead of against one another. This may explain why moments of deep clarity often arrive when people feel emotionally centered rather than mentally overwhelmed. In highly stressed states, perception narrows, creativity decreases, decision-making becomes reactive. But when the nervous system settles, people frequently report stronger intuition, clearer thinking, and a greater sense of connection to life itself. Consciousness appears to expand when internal conflict decreases. I believe this is one reason modern society struggles with exhaustion on such a massive scale. People are flooded constantly with stimulation, urgency, fear, comparison, and distraction. The nervous system rarely receives an opportunity to recover fully. Attention is pulled outward every waking hour. Yet many scientists now acknowledge that sustained stress changes not only emotional health, but also memory, focus, and physical resilience. The human system was never designed to remain trapped in survival mode indefinitely. Ancient cultures seem to understand the importance of stillness long before modern technology existed. They recognized that silence, reflection, breath, and emotional discipline were not luxuries. They were necessary practices for maintaining inner balance. Today, neuroscience is beginning to confirm that intentional practices affecting attention and emotion can physically reshape the brain over time. Once again, ancient insight and modern research appear to be meeting at the same crossroads. One area of research that continues to intrigue scientists involves the placebo effect. For years, many people dismissed it as an inconvenience within medical studies, but the placebo response may actually reveal something profound about consciousness itself. In some cases, individuals experience measurable improvement simply because they believe healing is possible. Their expectation alone triggers biological changes. The body responds to belief as though belief carries physical force. That realization should make all of us pause and reconsider the hidden power of expectation in daily life. Every assumption we hold about ourselves influences the way we move through the world. If someone believes they are weak, incapable, or permanently broken, their behavior gradually aligns with that internal model. But when people begin changing their perception of what is possible, new behaviors emerge, new emotional patterns form, and eventually even biology can begin reflecting those shifts. I have noticed that many breakthroughs occur the moment people stop identifying completely with their past experiences. The brain is designed to preserve familiar patterns because familiarity feels safe. Yet growth often requires stepping beyond emotional habits that once defined us. Consciousness evolves when we stop rehearsing old limitations and begin engaging life from a different internal state. Scientists exploring neuroplasticity now understand that the brain remains adaptable throughout life. New pathways can form, old patterns can weaken, emotional conditioning can change. This means human identity is far more flexible than earlier generations believed. We are not fixed beings trapped permanently by previous experiences. We are dynamic systems capable of transformation. What becomes especially interesting is how relationships influence consciousness as well. Emotional states spread between people more easily than most realize. Calmness affects others. Anxiety affects others. Enthusiasm, anger, hope, and fear all carry measurable influence through tone of voice, facial expression, body language, and nervous system responses. Human beings constantly regulate one another emotionally, often without speaking a single word. This suggests that consciousness may operate collectively in ways science has barely begun to understand. Entire communities can become shaped by shared emotional environments. Fear spreads rapidly through groups, so does inspiration. One emotionally regulated person can stabilize an entire room, while one chronically distressed individual can create tension affecting everyone nearby. The invisible emotional field surrounding human interaction may be far more powerful than we once imagined. And perhaps this is why personal transformation matters beyond the individual level. Every time someone becomes more self-aware, emotionally balanced, and internally coherent, they influence the environment around them. Families change, conversations change, decisions change. The effects ripple outward in ways impossible to measure fully. The emerging science of consciousness is not merely teaching us about the brain. It is teaching us about the hidden relationship between attention, emotion, biology, behavior, and human connection. And the deeper this research goes, the more it challenges one of the oldest assumptions of modern culture, because we are beginning to see that human beings may never have been separate from one another or from the living system surrounding us in the first place at all today. And when we begin to truly absorb that idea, something profound starts to shift inside us. The illusion of separation weakens. We no longer see consciousness as an isolated event happening privately inside individual minds. Instead, we start recognizing that every human being exists within an ongoing exchange of energy, emotion, perception, and influence that never fully stops. What researchers are uncovering now about human connection is deeply revealing. Studies involving emotional synchronization have shown that people in close proximity often begin mirroring one another physiologically. Heart rhythms align, breathing patterns adjust unconsciously, emotional states become contagious. Even facial expressions and vocal tones subtly synchronize during meaningful interaction. These discoveries suggest that human beings are constantly communicating beneath the level of ordinary awareness. I think this explains why certain environments feel immediately calming while others create tension the moment we enter them. Long before the conscious mind analyzes details, the body is already sensing emotional information. We respond to invisible signals continuously. The nervous system is reading emotional atmosphere all the time. For many years, science focused almost entirely on measurable physical processes while overlooking subjective human experience. But consciousness research is beginning to reveal that subjective experience itself may be one of the most important factors shaping health, resilience, and behavior. Two people can witness the same event and emerge psychologically transformed in completely different ways because consciousness interprets reality through meaning, memory, expectation, and emotional conditioning. This is why unresolved emotional patterns can quietly shape an entire lifetime. Many individuals believe they are responding to the present moment when, in reality, they are reacting to emotional memories stored deep within the nervous system. A simple conversation can trigger fear from decades earlier. A tone of voice can activate stress responses connected to past experiences. The body remembers emotional survival patterns even when the conscious mind tries to move forward. Researchers studying trauma and emotional conditioning now recognize that intense experiences can alter nervous system behavior long after the original event has passed. The body adapts around emotional pain in an attempt to maintain protection. But eventually, those protective responses can become limitations. People begin avoiding vulnerability, suppressing emotion, or expecting disappointment because the nervous system associates openness with danger. Yet one of the most hopeful discoveries emerging from this research is that healing also appears possible through repeated experiences of safety, emotional regulation, and conscious awareness. The nervous system can relearn stability, emotional patterns can soften. Human beings can gradually retrain the body to stop expecting constant threat. I find this deeply important because it changes the conversation around human growth entirely. Transformation is not simply about positive thinking or forcing optimism onto difficult situations. Real transformation involves teaching the body and mind to operate from a different internal state consistently over time. It is a biological process as much as a psychological one. This may also explain why practices involving breath, focused attention, visualization, and emotional awareness continue appearing across so many different cultures throughout history. Long before modern laboratories existed, people discovered that inner states could influence physical experience. Today, brain imaging and physiological measurements are finally giving scientists tools to observe these effects directly. One of the most intriguing findings involves attention itself. Neuroscientists now understand that whatever we focus on repeatedly strengthens related neural pathways. Attention acts almost like fuel for the brain. The more energy we give certain emotional patterns, the stronger they become. This means many people unknowingly train themselves into anxiety, frustration, or hopelessness simply through repeated mental rehearsal. But attention can also become a tool for growth. When individuals consciously practice gratitude, emotional presence, compassion, or resilience, entirely different pathways strengthen over time. The brain changes according to where awareness is directed most consistently. Consciousness literally helps sculpt the physical structure responsible for future perception. I believe this is one reason modern distraction has become so dangerous. Human attention is constantly fragmented by noise, endless stimulation, and emotional overload. Many people rarely experience uninterrupted stillness anymore. Yet moments of silence may be essential for consciousness to reorganize itself properly. In silence, the nervous system recalibrates, perception sharpens, emotional clutter begins clearing. Scientists studying meditation have repeatedly documented changes in brain regions connected to emotional regulation, self-awareness, and stress reduction. These findings suggest that consciousness can intentionally influence the nervous system through disciplined attention. The mind is not merely reacting to the body, the mind is participating in shaping it. What becomes even more fascinating is the growing research surrounding intuition. Many individuals report sensing information before logical evidence appears. Some researchers are cautiously exploring whether the nervous system processes subtle environmental signals faster than conscious awareness recognizes them. While much remains unknown, these studies raise important questions about the true depth of human perception. Perhaps consciousness operates more like a receiver than a generator. Perhaps the brain is not creating awareness entirely on its own, but interacting with something larger that we still do not fully understand. The more science explores these possibilities, the more mysterious consciousness becomes rather than less. And maybe that mystery itself is important. Modern culture often pressures people to reduce life into predictable mechanical explanations. But human experience refuses to fit neatly into purely material models. Love changes biology, meaning changes resilience, hope changes behavior. Belief changes perception. The invisible dimensions of human life produce visible consequences constantly. As researchers continue uncovering new evidence about the relationship between consciousness and reality, we may eventually realize that humanity underestimated itself for generations. Beneath ordinary awareness lies an extraordinary capacity for adaptation, healing, emotional intelligence, creativity, and connection. And if these discoveries continue expanding in the direction they are now pointing, then the future of human understanding may depend not only on technology or external advancement, but on whether we finally learn how to understand the immense power already existing within the human mind and heart together as one unified system. And once we begin viewing the human mind and heart as a unified system rather than separate mechanisms, many of the contradictions within modern life suddenly start making sense. People have been taught to prioritize logic while suppressing emotion, to value productivity over inner balance, and to search endlessly for external achievement while neglecting the internal conditions shaping their experience every day. But consciousness research is revealing that our internal world may influence reality far more deeply than outward circumstances alone. I often reflect on how many individuals spend their lives searching for control in the external environment while remaining disconnected from the emotional patterns operating inside them. Yet the nervous system responds primarily to internal interpretation, not simply external events. Two people can stand in the same room, hear the same words, and experience completely different biological reactions because their consciousness filters reality through unique emotional histories. This realization changes how we understand stress itself. Stress is not only produced by what happens to us, it is also produced by how the body interprets what happens. The meaning attached to experience shapes physiology in powerful ways. When the nervous system perceives danger, even symbolic danger, the body prepares for survival. Energy shifts away from healing and growth toward protection and defense. Over time, many people become so accustomed to living in states of emotional tension that they mistake survival mode for normal life. Constant worry feels ordinary. Mental overstimulation feels ordinary. Emotional exhaustion feels ordinary. Yet beneath that constant pressure, the body quietly pays the price. Sleep becomes disrupted, inflammation increases, attention weakens, emotional resilience decreases. Scientists now recognize that chronic emotional stress influences nearly every major system within the body. The immune system, cardiovascular system, digestive system, and even cellular repair mechanisms respond to long-term emotional conditions. Consciousness and biology are deeply intertwined. What we repeatedly feel becomes part of the body's operating environment. What fascinates me most is that awareness itself may be one of the most transformative forces available to human beings. The moment individuals become conscious of their emotional patterns, something begins changing automatically. Reactions that once operated unconsciously become visible. Behavioral cycles become recognizable. Awareness creates space between stimulus and response. This space is incredibly important because it allows people to stop living entirely through automatic conditioning. Most emotional reactions are rehearsed patterns shaped by repetition over many years. The brain learns familiar responses and repeats them efficiently. But consciousness gives human beings the ability to observe those patterns rather than remain trapped inside them. Researchers studying mindfulness and emotional regulation have found measurable improvements in stress recovery, attention control, and emotional resilience when individuals practice sustained self-awareness. The brain gradually becomes less reactive and more adaptable. In many cases, people report feeling as though they are reclaiming ownership of their inner world for the first time. I believe this may be one of the greatest turning points in human development. For generations, society focused primarily on controlling external conditions while paying little attention to the internal processes shaping perception itself. But external achievement alone cannot create lasting fulfillment if the nervous system remains dominated by fear, conflict, or emotional imbalance. Many people achieve goals they once believed would bring happiness only to discover that unresolved internal patterns remain unchanged. The environment shifts, but the emotional experience stays familiar. This happens because consciousness interprets reality according to the conditioning already stored within the mind and body. Without inner transformation, external change often feels temporary. The emerging science of consciousness suggests that sustainable change begins internally first. Emotional patterns influence thoughts, thoughts influence decisions, decisions influence behavior, behavior shapes life experience. Everything is connected within a continuous feedback loop between consciousness and biology. What becomes especially powerful is the understanding that human beings are not passive victims of this process. The brain remains adaptable. Emotional conditioning can shift. Attention can be redirected intentionally. Even small, repeated changes begin influencing neural pathways over time. Every moment of awareness becomes an opportunity to strengthen a different internal pattern. This may explain why gratitude practices, visualization techniques, breath regulation, and emotional reflection produce measurable physiological effects. These practices are not merely symbolic rituals, they actively influence nervous system behavior. Consciousness changes biology through repeated emotional experience. Scientists exploring epigenetics have also discovered that environmental and emotional conditions can influence how certain genetic potentials are expressed. Genes are not always rigid, predetermined instructions. Many operate more like responsive systems interacting continuously with internal and external environments. This means emotional experience may play a larger role in long-term health than previously imagined. I find this deeply hopeful because it suggests human beings possess more influence over their lives than they were conditioned to believe. We are not completely defined by past experiences, inherited tendencies, or external circumstances. Consciousness participates actively in shaping the future through perception, behavior, emotional conditioning, and attention. At the same time, this realization carries responsibility. If thoughts and emotions influence biology, then what we repeatedly expose ourselves to matters enormously. Constant negativity, fear-driven information, emotional conflict, and overstimulation shape nervous system patterns over time. The human mind absorbs emotional environments continuously. This is why intentional inner balance becomes essential rather than optional. Moments of stillness are essential, reflection is essential, emotional honesty is essential. Without them, consciousness becomes overwhelmed by external noise and reactive conditioning begins dominating perception. And perhaps this is where science is leading us now toward a completely new understanding of human potential. The more researchers study consciousness, the less human beings appear to function like isolated mechanical systems. Instead, we resemble deeply interconnected networks of biology, emotion, energy, memory, attention, and awareness continuously influencing one another and the world around us. The implications of this understanding extend far beyond personal growth alone. If consciousness influences behavior collectively, then entire societies may ultimately reflect the emotional states most consistently reinforced within human minds. Fear creates one kind of future. Compassion creates another. Division creates one reality. Connection creates another. And as scientists continue uncovering the hidden relationship between consciousness and human experience, we may eventually realize that the greatest transformation humanity ever undergoes will not begin with technology, machines, or external systems at all, but with the moment people finally recognize the extraordinary influence their inner world has always carried beneath the surface of everyday life and human reality itself.
One of the most important discoveries emerging from modern consciousness research is the realization that human beings are not simply reacting to life mechanically. We are participating in life through our attention, emotions, perceptions, and internal beliefs every single day. The deeper scientists study the relationship between the brain, nervous system, and emotional states, the more they uncover evidence suggesting that our inner world shapes our outer experience far more than previous generations understood. To understand this clearly, imagine the human body as a highly advanced communication system. Every thought, emotion, and reaction sends signals throughout the body constantly. When someone experiences fear, the brain releases stress chemicals that prepare the body for survival. Muscles tighten, breathing becomes shallow, heart rate increases. This response is useful during genuine danger, but many people unknowingly activate the same survival response through imagination, worry, or emotional stress alone. The body often reacts to mental stress as if the threat is physically present. This means a person repeatedly worrying about failure may experience biological stress even while sitting safely at home. Over time, the nervous system adapts to this emotional environment. The body begins expecting tension as normal. This is why chronic stress can slowly affect sleep, digestion, focus, emotional balance, and physical health. Now consider the opposite experience. Think about a moment when you felt deeply calm, appreciated, or emotionally connected to life. Your breathing probably slowed naturally, your muscles relaxed, your mind became clearer. In those moments, the body shifted into a state that supports healing, balance, and recovery. Modern science is confirming that emotional states influence physical processes continuously. This understanding changes how we think about thoughts and emotions entirely. Thoughts are not just invisible mental events floating through the mind, they become biological instructions when repeated consistently. Emotions are not merely reactions. They are chemical signals shaping the internal environment of the body. One of the easiest ways to understand this concept is through the example of habit formation. Imagine someone learning to play piano for the first time. At first, every movement feels awkward and difficult. But through repetition, the brain creates stronger neural pathways connected to those movements. Eventually, the behavior becomes natural. The same process happens emotionally. If a person spends years practicing frustration, fear, self criticism, or hopelessness, the brain strengthens those pathways through repetition. The body becomes chemically familiar with those emotional states. Eventually, negativity can begin feeling normal simply because it has been rehearsed so often. But this also means positive emotional states can be strengthened intentionally. Gratitude, patience, emotional awareness, resilience, and calmness are not fixed personality traits reserved for certain people. They are states that can be practiced and developed through repetition. The brain changes according to where attention is placed consistently. This idea connects deeply to something scientists call neuroplasticity, which refers to the brain's ability to reorganize itself throughout life. Earlier generations believed the adult brain remained mostly fixed after a certain age. Today, researchers know the brain continues adapting based on experience, focus, and emotional patterns. This means people are not trapped permanently by old habits or past conditioning. Think about how many people carry emotional memories from years earlier without realizing it. A painful experience from childhood may still shape adult reactions decades later. Someone criticized constantly while growing up may develop automatic self doubt. Another person exposed to constant instability may struggle relaxing even in safe environments. The nervous system remembers emotional survival patterns. Yet awareness changes everything. The moment a person becomes conscious of these patterns, transformation becomes possible. Awareness interrupts automatic behavior. It creates space between emotion and reaction. This is why mindfulness practices have gained so much scientific attention in recent years. Mindfulness simply means observing thoughts, emotions, and sensations without immediately becoming consumed by them. Studies show that consistent mindfulness practices can reduce stress responses, improve emotional regulation, and strengthen areas of the brain connected to attention and self awareness. A simple example is conscious breathing. Most people breathe shallowly during stress without noticing it, but slow, intentional breathing signals safety to the nervous system. The body responds by lowering stress activity. This demonstrates something powerful. Consciousness can directly influence biology through awareness and intentional action. Another important concept emerging from consciousness research involves emotional contagion. Human beings constantly influence one another emotionally. Have you ever entered a room where tension was immediately noticeable without anyone speaking? Or spent time with someone calm and felt yourself becoming calmer too? This happens because nervous systems communicate continuously through subtle signals like facial expression, body language, tone, and emotional energy. This means personal emotional balance matters far beyond the individual level. A calm person can stabilize a stressful environment. A fearful person can spread anxiety through an entire group. Consciousness operates collectively as well as individually. Practical application becomes essential here. Knowledge alone changes very little unless embodied daily. One useful practice involves observing emotional triggers without immediately reacting. The next time frustration appears, pause briefly before responding. Notice the physical sensations in the body. Observe the thoughts attached to the emotion. This small moment of awareness weakens automatic conditioning over time. Another powerful practice involves limiting constant exposure to fear based information and overstimulation. The nervous system absorbs emotional environments continuously. Many people overload themselves with stress signals all day without realizing it. Creating periods of silence, reflection, or emotional stillness allows the nervous system to recover and rebalance. Gratitude practices also carry measurable effects. This is not about pretending difficulties do not exist, it is about training attention to recognize supportive experiences alongside challenges. The brain naturally focuses on potential threats for survival reasons, but intentional gratitude helps create emotional balance and nervous system stability. Perhaps the deepest lesson emerging from all this research is that human beings possess far more influence over their inner experience than they were conditioned to believe. Consciousness is not passive. It shapes biology, perception, emotional resilience, relationships, and behavior continuously. The future of human understanding may depend on recognizing that lasting transformation begins internally first. Every thought repeated becomes stronger. Every emotion practiced becomes more familiar. Every moment of awareness shapes the nervous system gradually over time. And once people truly understand this, daily life stops feeling random and disconnected. Ordinary moments become opportunities to consciously shape the direction of the mind, the body, and ultimately the quality of human experience itself through awareness, intention, emotional balance, and the choices repeated consistently each day of life. Moving forward slowly,